Hey Gremlins, welcome to a new video. In today's video, I wanted to talk about Halloween. So Halloween became one of the most important nights in many countries at the end of the millennium. It has actually been estimated that 65% of adults participate in Halloween night in America. It is also an important night for the American economy, as the amount of money spent on Halloween has actually doubled in the last decade. However, Halloween has not always been a frivolous night aiming to increase a country's economy. Halloween has a rich and powerful story. I will start the story with one word: Samhain. Samhain is originally a Celtic night that is supposed to represent the end of a year and celebrated as such. It is actually a very old celebration, as Samhain was first mentioned in Irish literature around the 9th century. Today, Samhain is one of the most important celebrations for Wiccans. So, in case you don't know about Wiccans, I'm just gonna give you a little background. Wicca is a neo-pagan tradition that is relatively new. In Wicca, both the male and female aspect of divinity are represented through the god and the goddess. Through the year, Wicca celebrates 8 Sabbaths, which represent the change in seasons through the development of the life of the god and the goddess. Samhain is one of the most important Sabbaths for one reason: it represents the death of the horned god. The death of the god represents the end of the harvest season, which in old time meant that people had to group together and share resources for the long winter that was to come. Traditionally, Samhain really represents the beginning of winter. Fundamentally, the death of the horned god pushes Wiccans to look back at the year they had, recognize what they have learned and how they can grow from it, and also say thank you. Then, after midnight, traditionally, Wiccans are going to make new wishes for the year to come, as Samhain acts as the equivalent of Pagan's New Year. Samhain can be celebrated at different times of the year. In the Northern Hemisphere, people celebrate it either the 31st of October or the 1st of November, depending on how you practice Wicca or any neo-pagan traditions. However, in the Southern Hemisphere, it is a bit of a touchy subject. Some practitioners believe that as Samhain represents the beginning of winter, it wouldn't be right to celebrate it at the beginning of summer, as summer happens at the same time as winter in the Southern Hemisphere. However, other practitioners believe that the power that is felt through Samhain night is really related to how many people are celebrating it, and therefore they are still going to celebrate Samhain at the same time of the year to harness all that power for their own ritual. At the end of the day, it is just an individual's choice, and as long as you practice the way you want to and the way you feel is right, well, it works for me. Another important aspect in Wicca is the development and use of psychic abilities and powers, especially through the use of magic, as you may have heard about it. This is usually done through rituals, and Samhain is definitely considered as the most important night for rituals in the Wicca tradition. Indeed, it is believed that at Samhain, the veil between the world is at its thinnest, and therefore, anything that comes from behind the veil is more easily accessible to the people that live here right now on what we know as our reality. It is also, as you know, the time of the year when winter is starting, and therefore the sun loses its power. And because the sun is less present, then the moon has more power over us. And the moon is definitely supposed to represent what is hidden, what is unknown, but also emotions, the feminine side of us, the creative side of us. But when it comes to magic, it really does represent divination, omens, any kind of magical work. Therefore, on Samhain, arts relying on divination are really going to be pushed forward because it is considered to be the best night for it. It is also interesting to know that when you draw the cards, for instance, it is very good to do it at the New Year's date, because then you can have a full view of what the year to come is going to bring you. However, Samhain is more than just spell work. It is really a time where you celebrate the dead, meaning that you are going to thank the dead. It can be someone important to you, or it can just be your family looking back and saying thank you to your ancestors. Some history customs around Samhain are ritual bonfires, which were very important because as the sun was losing its power, people felt like they needed to be more protected. And fire in the Wiccan tradition is used for many purposes, but some important ones are purification and also protection. It also unveils what is hidden. So people would create more bonfires so that they could protect themselves from the shadows lurking and what they could not understand in their world. And this is something that we can still see today. As we have said, divination is definitely important during that night. You don't have to do it, but most practitioners that I know do practice it. But what I found very interesting was, from the 16th century onward, we do find a lot of texts referencing mumming and guising. Guising is basically the act of wearing costumes. This practice started as people believed that during that night, as I told you, things that were behind the veil could come to earth and dwell with us. But people were very afraid of it because yes, you've got good spirits, but you also have very malevolent ones. Therefore, as the spirits could roam the earth more easily during Samhain, people decided to disguise themselves as harmful and scary spirits to keep them at bay. But how did Samhain become the Halloween that we know today? I mean, in general, I think you will agree with me, aside from pagans or neo-pagans, we don't really see people going outside and using divination. So what happened exactly? During the rise of Christianity, Samhain was still celebrated. However, as you probably know, Christianity or the church really wanted to harm the image of pagan traditions as they wanted to spread their religion. Eventually, the church realized that it would be much easier to take over pagan celebrations rather than trying to make people forget about them. So, in 1835, the Pope Gregory IV designated November 1st, which was Samhain originally, as All Hallows, meaning All Saints' Day. However, it was not enough for people to forget about a tradition that went on for centuries. And as it failed to actually make people forget about the traditions, the church actually added in 1998 another celebration that fell on the 2nd of November. And this celebration is today known as All Souls' Day. Through the years, some of Samhain traditions have remained, such as guising, but some traditions were lost, such as fortune-telling practices. To be honest, not only Samhain was deeply impacted by the rise of the church, but the entire pagan movement really lost a lot of its followers and was overall truly diminished by the rise of monotheist religions. However, as it evolved through the centuries, Halloween did persist. It is interesting to notice that, unlike Christmas or Easter, Halloween has a very different focus. Indeed, for instance, on Christmas, you are really going to focus on your family. But Halloween is not really about that. In fact, Halloween is way more grown up than what we would think of it. Indeed, children do go out and disguise themselves. By asking adults tricks or tricked, then they are changing the dynamic of power that we usually see between adults and children. Instead of being the adult asking something to the child, then the child is in power and can say, "Give me this or I will do that to you." Moreover, the mask and carnival atmosphere allowed children to master their fears and adopt and try out new identities. As a child, as you know, it is very scary to go outside, especially without your family with you, as Halloween is often celebrated with your friends. Well, it can be very scary for a child to go out, knock on a door and ask something to an adult. But it is something that they can do through Halloween, and this is giving me more power over themselves. It is also very interesting to see that by disguising themselves, children are allowed to try out different identities, which is just so crucial for their development. I mean, everyone is searching for who they really are, and Halloween is a perfect night for that. Simultaneously, not only children are getting something from Halloween, adults are also participating more and more in Halloween, and through this night we can actually let go of what is socially acceptable and try out new things. We can transcend normal rules and relieve the tensions of social order. But this doesn't fully answer why is Halloween still celebrated. Well, there are three usual answers to that, and then I will give you my answer. The first reason is both children and adults are gaining something from this night. Children can invert power structures, try new identities and master their fears, while adults can go out and explore new things as well. It is actually interesting to see that in the last few years, Halloween has really become a huge market for adult activities. In America, Halloween actually became the second most buzzy night for partying after New Year's Eve. The second reason why Halloween is still here is the humongous economical activity that lies behind it. Many candies are sold, so are costumes, and as we have just stated, it is the second most busiest night in terms of partying in America, which is non-negligible. And finally, the third reason is probably the whole marketing around it. There's so many movies, so many books. I mean, who doesn't like to watch a horror movie or something a little bit spooky at midnight on Halloween? However, I personally believe that Halloween is still here because it calls on something that we all have. The wish to master our fears and to go forward, to try new things. And I think it also reflects that we all feel that we have a certain darkness in ourselves. And Halloween seems a perfect night to actually understand and go deep into our darkness. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm gonna put you some links down below about articles and books on the subject. It's mainly gonna be based on Wicca, but if you're interested, go for it. I'll see you for another video.